Welcome to another episode of Who Needs Shoes, and I'm your host, Tanya Manning-Yarde. And today we have very, very, very special guests. So, if you've spent any time in a classroom in the last 40 years, you know that the soul of a school isn't found in the curriculum or in the architectural layout of the building. It's found in the people who act as its glue, the ones who can negotiate a union contract in the morning, coach a varsity team in the afternoon, and still find the energy to help a struggling student find their voice in a poem by the end of the day. My guest today is Mike Pipa. Mike is a veteran educator whose career has spanned nearly 4 decades, serving as a national board certified ELA teacher, a building administrator, and now a consultant for the Capital Area School Development Association. But our history goes back further than the accolades. 30 years ago, when I was a brand new teacher looking for a North Star, Mike was that mentor for me. He was the first person to ever tell me about a word that could eventually reshape much of our conversations: autism. And at that time, Mike and his wife Donna were navigating a new diagnosis for their elder child in a world and an educational system that didn't yet have a roadmap for neurodiversity. Today, we're going to talk about what it was like to raise a family in that information vacuum of the early 90s, how his journey as a parent fundamentally changed the way he led school buildings, and what decades inside of the American school system teaches you about the true meaning of human dignity. Mike, welcome, welcome, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was just such a beautiful intro. Thank you so much.
It is so true. I think the world of you, and being able to observe you in classes, talk with you during our lunch breaks, see you after school, get all of those tidbits of advice, I know has truly made me a better teacher, a better person, and a better mother. That I know for a fact. That I know.
We do all of that in community, don't we?
We
There's just
do.
no way we can be good without each other.
It is so true. I want to start our conversation with you being as a teacher, like your early days. So, when you first walked into a classroom, what did you think teaching was going to be? And what did reality teach you?
First, I couldn't believe that they gave me the job.
Mm.
So whatever teaching was, I felt totally overmatched by the expectation. And this was a time before learning standards. So we're talking 1989, and there were no standardized assessments. I got hired to teach eighth grade ELA. There was no curriculum. Basically, I was told by my instructional administrator, who was such a powerful educator and presence in that early decade of my career, that we hired you because we believe in you and you're going to do great things. And we trust your judgment when it comes to figuring out what you feel your kids are ready to learn, need to learn, would like to learn. And you've got great colleagues. And I worked my tail off to get into classrooms, to take a look at other people's curriculum, to, begin to put the pieces together. But I was as raw a chunk of earth that you could have hired. And I was cared for patiently by my colleagues and my kids. I think my one superpower was that I just love them. I just, it was impossible for me not to respond to them. And they, I think, then gave me grace to learn and told me the truth all the way through again and again and again. And as teachers, you and I know that is that is the feedback that we can't escape, and that's the feedback we need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've known you now for almost 30 years. And what I've always noticed was that you had a natural gift for helping people feel seen in a room. Did anyone ever do that for you, and who modeled that for you?
Oh gosh, yes. Uh, I think when well, as you have, um, we have those standout educators in our learning story. And in 4th grade, Mrs. Shirley Bookman was the first teacher who knew saw me, and she saw each of us. She was an each and every kind of teacher.
Mm.
Um, each one of us was incredibly important to her, and that's how she regarded us. And that that lit me up as a learner. Um, eh, I had teachers I enjoyed. I wanted to please my teachers. They were the adults who responded to me in my life, so I wanted to make them happy. um, when I got to college as a freshman, I was a working class kid and the first in my family. And I didn't know what college was supposed to be. I was certain I didn't have what it took to be successful. I was painfully insecure and desperate to do well and right. And I had a professor, Dr. Elaine Onyebeni, and she taught me with firmness, clarity, and love what it meant to think. And from the first class I took with her as a freshman, um, she handed back a 2-page paper we were to write with 3 pages of handwritten commentary in pencil.
Wow.
She had written more about my paper than I had written in it. I got a nice crisp C at the top of the paper. And
Mhm.
I realized that the lights had been shut off in the classroom because she handed them out at the end of class.
Mhm.
I looked up and I had just finished reading her commentary, and she was standing at her desk in the front with her briefcase,
Mhm.
kind of resting in front of her. And she said, "I can leave the lights on if you'd like." "Oh, no, no, no. No, no, I just finished. These comments are incredible."
Mhm.
And she said, "Well, I spent a good deal of time making those comments." And
Mhm.
I walked up and I said, I know that this is probably too much to ask, but I would love to be able to rewrite this paper in light of the comments you've given me. I don't need another grade. I just want to do the thinking I should have the first time I handed this in to you. And she said, "Well, that's a deal. Do not ever hand me another first draft. Do you
Mm.
understand?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And then she said, "And you will get the grade you earn from that revision, because this is how professional writers work. We don't submit first drafts to anybody except our most trusted readers, knowing that we are going to read for them at some day. And when they give us feedback, we are going to make use of it before we revise a second time and give that revision back to our trusted readers.
Mm.
It is many revisions before we know we have a polished piece that speaks with the intent of our best thought. Do you understand?" And I remember in that moment going, "Yes." And I took every class I could with her, and it was her work with the program for peace and justice at Siena University that shaped my thinking as a young scholar. And the people that, she helped us meet as students,
Mhm.
we were among giants, and there was greatness, and my mouth was having is hanging open all the time. Yeah, she was the person who really saw not only who I was and how broken in some ways,
Mm.
but the healing I needed and the opportunities to learn that would provide opportunity for healing and who I could be. Yeah.
Mm.
She's the one who made it very clear to me that my calling was teaching and
Mm.
not computer science.
Let's shift gears a little bit now, moving you from the classroom to sharing with us about your experiences as a parent. I wanna take you to the moment where you learned that your child, was diagnosed with autism. What do you remember about that day, the room you were in, who told you, and what was said?
I think it's okay to say the doctor's name, Dr. Deborah Nordhausen,
Mhm,
and, I remember that room. It's funny you should say that because,
mhm,
when in that moment, it seared into us, isn't it?
mhm. It is.
Uh, I remember her office. I remember how she greeted us. I remember knowing instantly in that greeting that I was talking with somebody on the spectrum. I remember our child who was then, named Cole. Um, Cole, entered with us, and before the doctor really talked to us very much, she put her hands on our knees, bent down, and said and pointed at a toy box and said when she was done speaking, Cole could go over there, open the toy box, and begin removing whatever toys he wanted. Then she asked Cole to look at the clock face, and she walked over and she touched the long hand, and she said, "When this long hand gets to this number, I will need you to stop. I will need you to come and sit with us, and I need you then to listen to questions that I will ask you and to give me some answers. Does that make sense?" And Cole nodded. And then she said, "You may open the box and play. I'm going to speak with your parents." Cole did. And she probably asked us maybe a 30 question inventory. And
Mhm,
it was things like, does your child eat foods by certain categories that he has created? And I remember that question. I was like,
mhm, mhm,
yes. Is it by texture or color? And we're like, color, color, orange and white food. And she said, "Mhm." When your child plays with toys, are they smaller toys able to be held in the hand? Or are they larger toys, smaller toys? When your child plays with toys, does he play with toys at eye level so that he sets it on a surface, even with his eye gaze, or he kneels so that his eye gaze is even with the surface the toy is on? And we said, yes, he does that all the
mhm,
time. Will he structure and align multiple small handheld toys? Yes. In what way? Columns, long lines. By the time she had finished this inventory, I was choking back tears. Nobody had asked us questions that showed such clear understanding of the really unique neural profile of our child. And when she brought Cole over, she said, "There are things that you, Cole, understand very quickly. You know things that you're interested in very fast. Isn't that true?" And Cole nodded. "Cole, how many pipes are there in the room?" "8." It was just in that moment where, she had used all of the information from this conversation. And then she let Cole go back to playing after she had asked him some questions. And she said, "The diagnosis that I am going to say best fits Cole is the same diagnosis that my 14-year-old son has. When all of my testing is done, my professional judgment and experience leads me to believe he'll be diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. I have Asperger's syndrome. My son has Asperger's. And so Donna's first question was, will he be able to live an independent life?" And
mhm,
her response was, "Why ever not?"
mhm.
So, you know, uh, I could probably at this point describe Cole's birth story if you would allow me,
Absolutely,
right? And
please.
so this is the question that she said not the statement she made to both Donna and me, and we said, "Sure." She said, "So, when you brought Cole home from the hospital, was he restive and unable to find sleep?" And we said, Yes, he didn't sleep for the first 48 hours. We brought him home. And was it fitful crying and really tantrum level screaming? And we said, yeah, yeah, for 48 solid hours. And she said, yep. And the only time that he could find sleep, and it was probably for as long as this situation lasted, was with you, Mom. Yes? And Donna said, yes. And it was when he did not have a shirt on, but was unclothed, maybe in a diaper, against your skin. And she said, yes.
Mhm.
And was his face turned into you? Yes. That is how he wanted to sleep, against my chest, right against my body with my arms around him. Yes. Because that was his normal environment. And for those first 48 hours of his life in the world, he was without any preset, like the presets I gave him when you came into my office, taken from that environment. Suddenly, no capacity to understand why and what was happening, no ability to get any explanation that could possibly make sense. And the closest he could to replicating that environment was in your embrace, with his skin against your skin, his nose smelling your scent, his ears hearing the familiar rhythm of your heart. That restored enough calm and familiarity for him finally to allow himself to sleep. So we're going to learn the lessons of what your child's neural profile needs in order to adjust to an external world that is very intrusive and disruptive to his most pleasing neural activity. Over time, he's going to become more skillful. You are certainly already becoming more skillful. This will work. And that was where we got the diagnosis initially. And we knew probably 18 months prior. We had a social worker come, and Donna knew instantly that, as you knew with Mace, that there were benchmarks that just weren't
Mhm.
happening. Um, and he was our first. So it wasn't that we had had any practice. We just, from play groups. And my response was, oh, boys take longer,
Mhm.
but a mother knows. And Donna knew. And the social worker said, there's probably going to be a kind of autism diagnosis in his future. It's too early to make one now. He's only 2. So it wasn't until he was 4 that we had the pediatric, the developmental pediatric psychologist go ahead and make that diagnosis. But it was a relief to speak finally after 4 years of living with this child to somebody who knew them chapter and verse, who knew our experiences. Because at that point, there was no one, right?
Right?
So
Alright.
it begins the journey for all of us.
I Your story resonates so much with our story in that one with Maceo having a very difficult time staying asleep at night. That sometimes I would literally, like Donna, I would have to go get him and go in the living room and place his head and his chest right here against my heartbeat and just lay back on the couch. And that is the way he would then fall back to sleep. And sometimes I thought like, "Oh my gosh, is it just me?" But when I'm hearing you share this with Donna, like I understood like that rhythm, that connection, that that pacing that he had known before even being born
Yes.
was something that would then bring him back to sleep. Um, like when Maceo was about 18 months, we realized like Keith was very by the age of 2, by the age of 1, he was walking. By 2, he wanted to read, he wanted to write, he wanted to cross the street by himself. So we figured somewhat that, okay, the 2 boys would be similar, quote
Mhm.
unquote, because they were only 14 months apart. But Maceo took longer to walk, longer to make utterances, and even when we had, like, the little toy walker, and kind of, like, goading him on, he just did not want to walk, he wasn't walking, and so when we would go to our pediatrician, who we loved, and she, with being a mom of 6 children of her own, said, "The kids, they have their different, milestones, he'll eventually get there." But, like, Kerwin kept saying,
Mhm.
something's different,
Mhm.
something's delayed." Um, and when we got Maceo's diagnosis at 3, and it was the diagnosis was, autism, speech delay, we were just like, when you sit in that chair and you take the test and you get the multi-page report, and the doctor was Dr. Haran, was going through and ticking off all the different assessments and what the scores were and what the indicators were suggesting, and you sit there and like, "Now what do I do with this?"
Yes.
And, like, that testing room goes so quiet because you're kind of, like, at this intersection of relief and grief. Like, relief, like, "I got an answer." And then in a way, but I got an answer to a question I wasn't asking, and I don't want this answered, you know?
Isn't it? It is grief, and it's the parenting experience I think we wanted that we're grieving,
Yes. And so
and
how
and
did
and also the future
Mhm.
for our child.
Yeah.
We're beginning to grieve a thing that hasn't even happened. You know? But
We haven't even started with preschool and school and relationships with family, relationships with friends, and yet you're like, "Oh my gosh, what's college gonna be like? What's
what's
adulthood gonna be like? Is that even a question mark?" And to what you were saying before too about living independently,
yes, yes,
is that yes, maybe, with
maybe,
contingencies? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel in so many respects, Mike, just,
yeah,
a mirror,
yeah,
because so much of what you're sharing in your experience is resonating, as you know.
yeah, yeah.
So
You know,
Mhm,
as parents, we one of the early delights of knowing you're pregnant and that you're bringing a child into the world is, having the ability to witness their growth. But we have this expectation that we don't always acknowledge that it will be growth that will feel familiar to us.
mhm,
It'll be
mhm,
an arc that looks like our own in some ways,
yes.
you know, and when we discover, "Oh, no, no,"
It's
it
gonna be
it
a
it
little
doesn't
different.
matter how many times somebody can tell us, when you're going to be a parent, those
Mhm,
expectations, you really need to fold them up and set them aside.
yes.
You really no, it doesn't matter how many times somebody, wise says that to us. It isn't
Mhm,
until we are clearly being instructed by a new reality that that is what we have to do, that we end up doing it, and you grieve it. You do.
mhm,
But my goodness, the you know, you've got Keith and you have Maceo, and you and Kerwin know that while the challenges so often feel not only daunting, but experts rarely have real clear answers at the outset.
mhm.
Raising Keith isn't a piece of cake either.
No.
So you have, a neurotypical child maybe and a neurally diverse child. I don't care. Parenting is going to wear you down to a little tiny pencil nub again and again and again.
speaking truth to truth.
right? So it's just, the breaking and remaking, that is the process of learning as a parent. It's just inevitable. And the way we get remade because of our neurally unique kids is
Mhm.
so powerful. We end up speaking a language. I always felt as a parent of a neurally diverse child, we end up speaking a language that so few people can understand. It's
Mm.
other parents of neurally diverse kids. And within that experience, the languages have their own dialects depending on the profiles of the child. It's it I wouldn't trade the learning for anything.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think our kids bring out of us, um, there's a trajectory you were mentioning that we think we're gonna take our children on, and I'm gonna guess in a way too because with being English language arts teachers that it's like, the wealth of literature,
Yeah,
the
sure.
different time periods, these books we're gonna introduce you to, these, rhetorical devices, the
Yeah.
opportunities to write, and it's like, in a different way. I'm gonna have to be ambitious with each of my children in a different way, you
Yes.
know?
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, I wanted to ask you because you also said, Michael, this is what I love about you because you are so like, phenomenal. This notion of being remade. And I'm curious that as parents, like the parents I'm sure that you and Donna wanted to be and become for both of your children. What did you experience in having both of your children? What was the remaking, if you will, that the 2 of you had to undergo, um, as husband and wife and as parents? And what has that journey been like for the both of you together, as well as in the parenting of both of your children?
I'll give 2 examples that show how different it was for me and for Donna, but how completely humbling that remaking experience is again and again. I was a brand new parent. This was Cole, was our first child, and he had done something like naughty,
Mhm,
and I wanted to put down a boundary. You can't throw a dish full of food like that. You can't. And he was standing in front of me, and he smiled while I was reprimanding him,
mhm,
and I got so angry that I turned him around and I gave him 2 sharp swats on his diapered bottom, and I watched his face and his eyes shrink back in terror and shock, and I yelped.
mhm,
And Donna just was there. She was there. She picked Cole up. She looked at me, "Take a minute," and off I went. It took some conversation with Donna afterwards where, it didn't happen in the moment. It happened probably, after the diagnosis at age 4, and it was devastating because it was 2 years after the fact. My face was not a language our child could read at age 2, just couldn't read expressions. The only thing that was clear at that stage for Cole at age 2 was when people seem unhappy, do for them what you like when they do for you. So Cole smiled at me because he knew I
mhm,
was unhappy.
mhm,
And when those neural synapses connected 2 years after the fact at age 4, my heart broke. It broke. And I understood there's so much I don't know. And there's so much I do know that I have to do better with. And I need to pay better attention to this child because he's going to rewrite my DNA.
mhm.
And and I clearly need that reprogramming. And I had Donna as my parenting partner, thank God, because we could say anything to each other. Calmly or at the top of our voices, we could say anything and know that there wasn't any breaking our commitment to each other. We were
Mhm.
in it together. We were our 2 best partners, but
Mhm.
that was a moment where, yeah, that was part of the remaking. For D, I think it came later on when Cole was an adolescent,
Mhm.
teen, about 18, and Cole's now 26, gonna be 27 in July, but and goes by Robin. So there's been a name change and many things. There was a point where it was clear that both of us as parents needed to get out of our child's way in terms of basic life functioning that they needed to take on.
Mhm.
And Donna was so used to doing everything. And she realized, in her mind, I'm the problem. And I have to accept that the challenges that our child is facing aren't aren't my challenges. They're the child's. I'm here to shepherd, and that's it, not engineer. And I've been engineering one thing after another, and it's actually prevented our child from having to grapple with productive adversity. I'm the problem.
Mm.
Not you, honey. She'd look at me and say, "You're already there. You're already there." And so that's where, you know, she was feeling like, ah, so frustrated with herself.
Mhm.
And, as partners, we get to say, okay, I'm gonna tell you what it looks like from my chair. What it looks like from my chair is that for the first 17 years of this child's life, you saw everything before any of us did. Stuff that we needed to see, stuff that really was going to determine the quality of life for our child. It was you again and again and again. You had to create a language that teachers in the district that we sent our child to could begin to understand.
Mm.
You had to do the research and provide it for them in forms and opportunities that would be engaging for them because they did not understand Asperger's, they didn't understand autism, they didn't understand differentiation, they didn't
Mhm.
understand anything.
Mhm.
You have been running point for 17 years, and we would be in a much more impoverished place and set of circumstances if you hadn't. And now you have to pivot. And so, what has been your incredible superpower that has kept us all learning and growing
Mhm.
has to transform somehow. And that's pretty awful as a challenge. But that's right. Those would be two good examples of the remaking, right?
Mm. And in raising both Robin and Izzy, how have you kept, I'm saying straight in your head, the needs of both of your children and discerning how to advocate for them, how to pivot, how to let them navigate the world on their own, and when to kind of sit back until they come to you with wanting you to be their compass? That's like one question. But another one I wanted to kind of go back and then go forward, if that's okay, is around how did you navigate um, Robin's schooling and education in that with having to educate school staff, teachers, support personnel, if you will, et cetera. How did you onboard them to be receptive of your questions, your pushback per se, so that Robin received the best education possible as well as Izzy, and then kind of coming back to the how do you navigate when to be parent and when to give space?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is such a good question, right? Because when we hand our baby off to the system, a certain kind of shattering happens in us
Mhm. Mhm.
because all we want is for those adults who interact with our child to love our child the
Yeah.
way he deserves, the way, maybe not to the extent we love him, but the way in which we love him. Um, and when you see evidence that nothing close to that is happening, yeah, that's, before I could enter a conversation with school people, as as my parental partner with D, I had to do so much preparation emotionally because, you know how it is.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you wanna make it right. You wanna make it right, and you wanna heal these people so it could be made right.
Mhm, mm. I love how you said that, "Heal these people." The brokenness sometimes that some will try to impose on your child
Yes. Yeah.
and make that the child's responsibility and not their own. Like, this child comes to your hands with so much possibility and promise and challenges, not in sugarcoating it, but not, as an example, you letting us know that you counted 128 times the child took his shoes off in class in
Mhm.
one day. Like, and what how much time did you spend counting and calculating and preparing the report to give us at the end of the day
Right? Right?
compared to when his shoes were off, what did you do with him? Was he laughing? Was he making friends?
Right?
Was he
Right?
happy? Was he playing? Was he eating different foods? Was he
Instead, your entire focus, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If
yeah,
I
yeah.
interjected, I apologize
No,
because
no, no, it's so good.
it's
It's
fire.
perfect
So
illustration. Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
Yeah,
is
so go
it
ahead,
is
Mike,
those
go ahead.
moments. It's those moments. And it was, at a point where, we had a couple of experiences where we felt like we should be apologizing to the adults for our child's
Mhm.
behavior in that setting. And, it's not like the diagnosis gives you a spine, but it gives you a place that is empirically based to work from. And so there was new language like learner profile, where you could say, among all of the students in your class, there are similar learner profiles, but none are identical. Would you agree? Yeah. So here's a learner profile that is a really far distance away from maybe the profiles you are used to working with. It's more unique. Is it without strength?
Mm.
So what strengths have you noticed? And boom, 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 boom.
Mhm,
Well, those would come
mhm.
out there. Good. That's good. We're noticing the same things. The deficits are big and they're loud and noisy and distracting, but those strengths are real. And here's what we've been able to begin doing with them. And we think it has real promise for the work you're doing in the classroom. And if you can create a little more flexibility that is manageable in how you teach, it can work not just for our child, but for every other learning profile that is a good distance from what you'd be tempted to call the average.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
our appeal to you is as we learn, we want to talk and share with you because he's not going to be the last child like this that comes into your classroom. And what you learn this year is going to be so valuable for your colleagues because they're going to have more kids like ours. coming through. And that was just really because of lack of programming and availability, and our
Mhm,
child needed to be in the integrated classroom anyhow. But
mhm,
boy, oh boy, teacher after teacher did not see our child as their child. And so it was the long process of helping people understand every child is our child. Every child is our child. It's the system that lulls us into a falsehood that that's not true.
mm,
And it's a system that is designed to herd our kids through a generic process that is unresponsive to anything outside a very narrow channel. And that has been true since its inception. And it's not just about neurodiversity, it's about diversity of every single kind. It's baked in. There is this religion of if you are different, I'm so sorry,
mhm,
instead of
mhm.
understanding that my difference is what you need. It is what life needs. Life doesn't happen without that difference. It just doesn't.
Right.
And it's again and again and again that you end up through, whatever our circumstances are, having to carry that truth into a conversation where people have enjoyed not having to know it. They think that's okay.
Mhm,
I was in a parent conference where I had to call a timeout. I think it was in second grade.
mhm,
And I think I put my hands up and I kept them up and I looked around until the teacher stopped talking. And I said, I need to tell you from my perspective how this is feeling. I feel tied to my chair and kicked repeatedly by your language.
mm,
That's how I'm feeling. And I don't
mm,
think that's your intent. So I'm going to ask us to pause because there's a better conversation we can have. And that's the one I want to have going forward. It may not be possible today. That's okay. But we are going to commit today to work at that better conversation.
mm.
That was the best I could do in that moment because, mm, right?
I can only imagine.
You can imagine. Yeah.
I have had, like you, those conversations where in one particular school district, when we had our IEP meetings, it felt like my heart was breaking because it was just, what can you tell me that my child is doing right? What can you tell me? Kerwin would even ask, is he learning his letters? Is he making friends? Can he understand mathematical concepts? What can you tell us about what he can do well that you're then capitalizing on compared to, as we were told in this particular school district, well, we really can't teach him until he keeps his shoes on. And then compared to another school district where the IEP meetings felt like celebrations,
Mm,
where it was just, this is what we set as the goals. This is what he was able to accomplish. This is what we're going to push for. And here's why. Even with an FBA in place in terms of his functional behavioral analysis, and he had, stemming or disrobing or other aberrant behaviors, it didn't the team didn't situate it as, well, this is something we're going to use as a tool to eclipse any possibilities, as compared to, we have a plan. When these particular things come up, this is how we'll address it while we're also on this trajectory to get him to these higher goals because we deem your child as capable. And that felt like with that particular cohort, this was in his elementary school, every teacher loved him as if he was their son. Um, and they took on things where during the pandemic, one of the teachers who was pregnant came and did a home visit
mm,
and was like, you are ushering in life and yet you're coming to see another teacher took it on herself to in collaboration with the administration, which was the other wonderful thing, that he could go and learn how to play the cello, which was just.
Ugh,
And another teacher was, he can go to the community, summer camp, right? And said it so matter of fact, like, the things that I experienced with this group of teachers was, like, here's what's possible
yes.
with your child.
Yeah,
So
and they
even how
lean in
they
when
lean in.
yeah, when they hear
They
from
lean in.
you, "Is he making friends?" "Mm, okay." So social interactions. What kind of social interactions feel right on the cusp of where he is, right? Like, they lean in, they wanna know
Right.
from you, right? And then they
Yes.
they recalibrate their
Mhm.
instructional focus, right? And
Yeah.
it those educators are sprinkled all over the place, right?
They're
And
so rare where they treat you as the
oh my
parent as their collaborator,
and
not the
yeah,
nemesis, not the
right.
enemy, not the adversary. We're
And the
all on the same.
uniqueness of your child's learning patterns and neural profile is just interesting. Like,
Yes.
and not because they objectify the child, but interesting because they wanna learn the dance. They wanna
Mhm.
get close and participate and interact with and extend. They get it. And,
Yeah.
what happens inside us, though, as parents when we cross paths with educators like this? It's a kind of atomic gratitude that,
Mm.
like, "I'm gonna need a moment. You didn't say
Mhm.
anything wrong. You just said so
Here
many things right. I just a little emotional." Yeah. Yeah.
is truth where you
Yeah.
feel on an unspoken level heard, understood, affirmed, embraced, validated, and pushed forward because they don't want you to stay here. They're believing enough in you to say, okay, now how can we get you as parent and as advocate and believer in this child like us to go to the next level? Like, what else can you dream
Yep.
bigger? You
Yes.
know? How do you, Mike, with the work that you're now doing in terms of having retired and now consulting, how do you support other interest holders, be they teachers, school districts, and kind of recognizing these possibilities? So I'm thinking like from having been entrenched in the school system and as a parent to now someone who's outside of it, how do you support upcoming teachers and school districts?
In 20 years, oftentimes one of the criticisms of public schooling is that it takes so long for change to occur. In the last 2 decades, the amount of change and depth of understanding gained and shared that has been woven into, the practices of schools
Mhm.
and, teacher preparatory programs, is astounding to me.
Mm.
There is such a vibrant common language around neurodiversity, and it needs to continue growing. It absolutely does, because there are so many things we're still not understanding well enough, and so many kinds of different ignorance that we still labor beneath. But that said, I don't have to make the hearts and minds case as a
Mm.
consultant, in most situations, because I'm working with people whose lives have been touched directly or whose professional experience includes, and they're in. What they need is practice, um, just good best practices when it comes to designing instruction for a roster of children where you have just about every kind of identifiable need in your classroom.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
you don't have a lot of support in terms of other bodies. And it's all coming down to you. And how am I supposed to cover the content? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's wonderful to have those conversations where I can tell them, yes, if I were to say to an administrator who supervises you, what is this teacher, your teacher's most important objective, what do you think that administrator would say? And a new teacher
Mhm.
will say, I have to show student learning improvement as it is measured on these standardized assessments. hmm And when you go go to that classroom every single day, are you thinking about the standardized assessments?
Mm.
No,
Mhm.
I'm really I just know what we're trying to do that day, and I am really at a point finally halfway through the year where I feel like I really know my kids, and I'm like, "Mhm. So what feels most important? What if that child doesn't score and she works at that test right up until the last point where you have to take it after 3 hours from her hands? Are you going to feel that she has failed with you? Why not? So, what's important? Is it possible that something is more important? Something is at work here, far more valuable than what is currently being measured in this very narrow assessment, right?
Mhm.
And having those conversations to say, yeah, standardized assessment, normative comparisons, data that we can disaggregate, really, use to pinpoint literacy skills and numeracy skills, all of that is important and has its place, but it is never going to be the most important thing. Never, 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 never. We get to work with the spirit of a young person. And yes, we have a lot of those young ones in our room, but our job is to nourish that first. First and last, that is our calling. And I feel like we know this as human beings. We participate in a profession that for too long has tried to work that out of us or dissuade us from that truth. And that's just a bunch of nonsense. All these things can be valuable, but as human beings, my goodness, how is it that we can be talked out of trusting what we know to be right for human beings? How is that possible? That's a bunch of nonsense. And educators are the professional profiles most likely to prioritize the right things. And
Hmm.
and so we can't let systems and forces that drive systems for ends and
Mhm.
results and outcomes that are ultimately inhumane get to call the shots about what is truly important. And my work as a consultant is to buck that trend and to restore educator confidence in each of these new people to the field in what you know and life has taught you to be right. How do we do right by our kids? And it's not a simple picture, but there are clear priorities, that's for sure.
Mike, I just want to thank you for this conversation. Thank you so much for the honor and opportunity for me to call you friend, to call you brother, to just thank you for being a mentor to me as both a fledgling teacher and mom and human being. Like you, even with us living in different locales, you have made for me and on me an indelible impression on my life. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that and to say thank you.
I love you and a big hug and a kiss across the ether. Um, you have always been a person of enormous love and talent and resolve about the best things. It's been a joy being your friend and being your colleague. And so such an honor to be on this show. Thank you so much.
You. Where can people find you if they want more information about your consulting services? Also tell everybody about your podcast. Goodness, I want to make sure that you have time to
So
talk about
on Apple and Spotify, I'm a panelist on a podcast called The Wheelhouse. It's connected to Students Matter Inc., which is the brainchild of Dr. Grant Chandler. And that's where people can find me. They can find me on LinkedIn, Michael Pipa. Uh, I'd be delighted for any outreach either way. But Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. And for those of you interested in finding out more information about Who Needs Shoes, you can find us at our website, whoneedsshoes.com. On Instagram, you can also find us at Who Needs Shoes. And also, any questions, inquiries, you can write to ask who needs shoes at gmail.com. Again, Mike, thank you so much for being on here. You are truly a treasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our listeners and our viewers, thank you so much. Take care, and we'll see you again.